and welcome back to Bookish Theories. In today's video, I would like to talk about TAEMIN's advice, focusing on a little breakdown and analysis of the concept, the lyrics, and the music video. Advice is a song that expresses TAEMIN's never-ending fight towards the people who criticize him and that portrays his desire to free himself from the stigma that he had to endure throughout his life. This is the title track of the last album that he released before enlisting, and in many respects, this final gift to fans can be seen as a literal advice that encourages people to let go of the petty drama and use their imagination in a better way. Now, as we'll see in a second, this is an advice that can be applied to both fans and haters depending on the way we choose to interpret the lyrics of the song, but in order to understand the message that TAEMIN is trying to convey here, we first need to take a look at advice in relation to both Criminal and Idea. You see, even if advice is not directly connected to the Never Gonna Dance Again duology, we can say that this concept can almost be seen as an unofficial epilogue where the experiences that he talked about in the past become a medium through which he can advise the audience on how to better themselves. In his previous project, TAEMIN went through an inner journey where he essentially created an original and new self-identity. He freed himself from a fake idea of perfection that was created by the world that surrounded him and created his own idea of perfection that truly conveyed the best version of himself possible. Back in Criminal, for instance, this journey began with TAEMIN rebelling against the norm and embracing his duality in order to achieve self-awareness. In Idea, on the other hand, this evolution continued with him using the knowledge that he acquired about himself in order to transcend the reality that he lived in and become an idea. This idea is none other than his true and original form that was liberated when TAEMIN rebelled against the fake reality that nurtured his fake self, and in Advice we see the result of this transformation because in the song TAEMIN is unapologetically himself and is now attacking the reality that kept him trapped up until now. As the lyrics tell us, no matter what everyone says, now TAEMIN is doing it his own way. He has no filter anymore and is ready to call out all the people who tried to destroy him throughout his career. In the song, TAEMIN calls out those who took him apart, the people who tried to shape him the way they wanted to, the people who stigmatized him, the people who judged him, and those who gossiped about him. These are all individuals that are so lost in their own imagination that have twisted everything that he's ever done in order to feed their delusions and create drama at his own expense, and TAEMIN is sick and tired of this mess because these people have crossed the line too many times. Now, since Advice is TAEMIN's last song before enlistment, this is a track that can essentially be seen as him literally going off the rails to spite the people who tried to trap him and paradoxically regain control over himself. As I mentioned before, this is a journey that started with Never Gonna Dance Again, and much like what happened back then, where he used his artistry in order to convey his rebellion and his rebirth, this time around his weapon of choice against his haters is none other than his music. Throughout the video, TAEMIN uses his voice and his dancing to put these people in their places and silence their useless talk with his talent, and this idea is portrayed since the very beginning, where we see TAEMIN wearing a mask and playing the piano in an industrial environment. Now, right off the bat, these visuals are very telling because even if in the scene his face is covered, TAEMIN is shirtless and his torso is covered with marks and tattoos. This is a clear indication that the whole point of the video is to show that TAEMIN is moving away from his idol persona and portraying a new side of himself that we never saw before, and even if this side is not as clean-cut as it was in the past, this is the most authentic version of TAEMIN yet. Bear in mind, Advice is a song that came out right after TAEMIN became an idea. Back then, he reconnected with his true form and liberated a new version of himself that was perfect not according to the standards of the industry but according to his own, and this is none other than the version that we see in the video. As the lyrics tell us, TAEMIN's intention here is to destroy the torso that people were chasing after, and this line is essential to understand the concept because in art, the torso is often considered as a body part that represents an ideal standard of beauty. By destroying this ideal torso and showing his own full of marks and tattoos, TAEMIN is essentially destroying his idol persona in order to free his true self hidden behind the mask, and by doing so he's also depriving people of a fantasy to use and abuse for their own dramas and their own delusions. You see, in many respects, Advice can be seen as TAEMIN's attempt at humanizing himself after years of working in an industry that constantly tried to portray him as an ideal of perfection. Much like what we see in the video, where there are a lot of whites and blacks in contrast with one another, TAEMIN is a human being that, like any other, has a bright side and a dark side, but most importantly is a person that we don't know, so the people that keep talking do so without having the key to his lock. Now this is a line that is also portrayed in the video, where we see that the lock that TAEMIN is talking about is none other than the lock to access his mind. This is a place that is portrayed as comfortable and intimate, but also as a location that is too small to contain him, so the only option that he has is to express his true self through his art, because by understanding his art you have the key to that part of himself. The people who want to trap him, however, don't care about this, because these people are only interested in the fantasy that they created in their own mind. They don't want to see the dark side that TAEMIN is showing them, but TAEMIN is showing it anyway, because he wants to destroy the ideal torso they were chasing after and portray the real person that is hidden behind it. If you look closely throughout the video, TAEMIN is not only portrayed with marks and tattoos that cover his body, but also with dirty hands, and this might be a way to symbolize the hard work that he took in order to get to this point of his life. It's not the idea of fantasy that people have of him that achieved the success that we see, but rather the man behind the mask that put in the work to improve himself while people talk. Through this work, he was not only able to evolve in his craft, but also to understand himself well enough to rebel against the standard and create his own, and the result of this process is the advice that TAEMIN is giving in the song. This advice is to stop worrying about others, to use your imagination in a creative way, but also in a positive way without wasting it in drama and pettiness. It's an advice that tells you to work on yourself instead of thinking about others, to rebel against those who want to trap you, and to be yourself without fear and without shame. And as I mentioned before, this is an advice that can be applied to essentially anybody. It's an advice that TAEMIN gives to his haters out of spite, but also an advice that he gives to his fans out of love, because after showing us his journey in Never Gonna Dance Again, his final gift is to spread what he learned in the process of discovering himself. As we see in the lyrics, this process is portrayed as him going off the rails, which in the video is compared to a car crash that gives birth to his new self. Now, despite the fact that the crash symbolizes his loss of control, showing this loss of control to the audience paradoxically allows him to transcend this reality and regain control over his life. As we see in the video, after he crashes, we see TAEMIN floating in a red space and then welcoming his new self dressed in half black and half white. At this point, TAEMIN is not an idol anymore. He is not an ideal of perfection, but rather his own ideal of perfection, which is an artist defined by his craft who is not afraid to show all sides of him unconditionally. As we see in the choreography, now TAEMIN is the one in control. He has the power to move and push back those that surround him at will, so by the end, TAEMIN is free, and because of that, he wants you to follow his advice and do the same as well. So that's it from me today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, please think about liking and subscribing. As always, thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll see you next time. Bye bye!